Have you ever wondered what secrets lie hidden beyond the gates of Eden? What mysteries were buried beneath centuries of silence, locked away from human eyes since the dawn of creation itself? Today we're about to uncover 10 forbidden truths about the Garden of Eden that will shatter everything you thought you knew about paradise. Most people think they understand the story of Eden. Adam and Eve, a serpent, an apple, and humanity's fall from grace. But what if I told you that's barely scratching the surface? What if the real story contains secrets so profound, so earth-shattering, that they've been deliberately hidden from view for thousands of years? I'm talking about mysteries that challenge our understanding of creation itself. Truths that reveal the garden wasn't just a place, but a dimension. Secrets about what really happened before the fall, and discoveries that will make you question everything you've ever been taught about the beginning of time. If you're ready to journey beyond the veil to explore the forbidden knowledge that few dare to seek, then stay with me. Because what we're about to uncover isn't just ancient history. It's a revelation that could transform how you see reality itself. Comment 777 if you're prepared to unlock mysteries that have been sealed since the foundation of the world. Your courage to seek truth is what makes this journey possible. Now let me ask you something that might disturb you. What if Eden never really ended? What if it still exists, hidden in dimensions beyond our perception, and what we lost wasn't just a garden, but access to realms of existence our minds can barely comprehend? The first forbidden secret about Eden is this: the garden wasn't located on Earth as we know it today. Scripture gives us geographical clues, rivers and locations that seem to point to Mesopotamia. But these are echoes, shadows of something far more extraordinary. The original Eden existed in what ancient texts call the space between spaces, a realm where the physical and spiritual worlds intersected perfectly. Think about this for a moment. If Eden was simply a physical location on our planet, wouldn't we have found remnants by now? Wouldn't archaeology have uncovered traces of this paradise that once housed the first humans? The silence of the earth itself tells us we're looking in the wrong dimension entirely. The Hebrew word for Eden, paradoxically, doesn't just mean garden or delight. In its deepest sense, it refers to a place of timeless pleasure that exists outside the constraints of linear time. This wasn't just geography. This was a state of being where eternity touched the temporal, where the infinite compressed itself into a space that human consciousness could inhabit. Ancient Jewish mystical texts speak of Eden as existing in the world of Atzilut, the realm of emanation where divine light flows unfiltered. This isn't poetry or metaphor. These texts describe a literal dimension where the laws of physics as we understand them simply don't apply, where thought becomes reality instantaneously, where the barrier between mind and manifestation dissolves completely. But here's where it gets truly mind-bending. If Eden existed in this interdimensional space, then Adam and Eve weren't just the first humans. They were beings capable of existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions of reality. They possessed consciousness that could navigate realms we've completely lost access to. This leads us to our second forbidden secret. Adam and Eve weren't created as we are now. They were fashioned as interdimensional beings with capabilities that would seem godlike to our current understanding. Their bodies weren't subject to entropy. Their minds weren't limited by the constraints of linear thinking. They existed in a state of consciousness that modern science is only beginning to glimpse through quantum mechanics. Consider what the text actually says about their creation. God formed man from the dust of the earth, but then breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. That breath wasn't just oxygen. It was the divine spark that connected them directly to the source of all existence. They weren't just alive, they were conduits for life itself. Their consciousness operated on frequencies we can barely imagine. They could perceive the true names of all creatures because they saw beyond the surface into the essential nature of things. When Adam named the animals, he wasn't making up labels. He was recognizing and speaking the vibrational signatures that defined each being's existence. But perhaps most remarkably, they existed in perfect harmony with the quantum field that underlies all reality. Their thoughts shaped their environment instantly. Their emotions resonated through dimensions. They lived in constant communion with forces that govern the universe at its deepest levels. This brings us to the third secret that changes everything. The serpent in the garden wasn't what you think it was. The word used in Hebrew is nachash, which doesn't necessarily mean snake. It refers to something that whispers, that enchants, that operates through subtle influence rather than direct confrontation. Ancient texts describe this being as having legs, as walking upright, as possessing intelligence that rivaled the angels themselves. This wasn't a simple reptile that happened to talk. This was a created being of immense power and knowledge, one that understood the dimensional nature of Eden and knew exactly how to exploit the interdimensional vulnerabilities of human consciousness. The Nachash didn't tempt Eve with fruit. It tempted her with knowledge of good and evil, which in the original language refers to the knowledge of extremes, the ability to perceive and manipulate the dualistic forces that shape reality. This being offered her access to powers that were meant to be developed gradually, under divine guidance, not seized through rebellion. But here's what makes this truly chilling. The serpent still exists. It still operates in those interdimensional spaces, still whispers to human consciousness, still offers shortcuts to power that come with devastating consequences. The fall didn't eliminate this influence. It gave it greater access to human awareness, which brings us to our fourth forbidden secret. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil wasn't a literal tree. It was a dimensional gateway, a point where opposing forces converged in such intensity that consuming its fruit would fundamentally alter human consciousness forever. The Hebrew word for tree, etz, can also mean foundation or pillar. This suggests something that supports or connects different levels of reality. The tree stood at the center of the garden, meaning it existed at the nexus point where all dimensional pathways converged. When the text says its fruit was good for food, pleasant to the eyes, and desirable to make one wise, it's describing something that appealed to every level of human existence. Physical desire, aesthetic attraction, and intellectual curiosity all converged on this single point of choice. But consuming this fruit didn't just give knowledge. It fractured consciousness itself. Adam and Eve went from existing in unified awareness to experiencing the constant tension between opposing forces. They gained the ability to perceive duality but lost the capacity to transcend it. This is why their eyes were opened. But what they saw first was their own nakedness. They had fallen from unified consciousness into fragmented self-awareness. They could no longer perceive themselves as part of the whole. They had become isolated observers of reality rather than integrated participants in it. The fifth secret reveals something even more profound about what was lost. Eden contained the tree of life, which wasn't just another plant. It was the source code of existence itself, the point where the creative force of the universe expressed itself in forms that could be directly absorbed by human consciousness. Salt. This tree represented unlimited access to the regenerative power that sustains all creation. As long as humans remained in harmony with this source, they could exist indefinitely in their perfected state. Death wasn't just absent from Eden, it was impossible there because life itself was constantly being renewed at the cellular and spiritual levels simultaneously. But when humanity fell into dualistic consciousness, they lost access to this regenerative frequency. They could no longer attune themselves to the wavelength of eternal life. Instead, they became subject to entropy, to decay, to the gradual breakdown that characterizes existence in our current dimensional state. This is why God expelled them from the garden. It wasn't punishment, it was protection. If they had eaten from the tree of life while existing in fractured consciousness, they would have become immortal beings trapped in a state of permanent spiritual dysfunction. They would have been unable to evolve, unable to heal, unable to find their way back to unity. Niletom. The sixth forbidden secret takes us even deeper into the mystery. The garden didn't disappear when Adam and Eve were expelled. It was sealed behind dimensional barriers that human consciousness in its current state cannot penetrate. Those barriers are guarded by beings of immense power, cherubim with flaming swords that turn in every direction. These aren't cute angels with harps. The Hebrew word cherub refers to beings of such intense spiritual energy that their presence would be devastating to any consciousness not properly prepared to encounter them. Their swords aren't weapons. They're instruments of purification that burn away anything that isn't aligned with divine frequency. The flaming sword that turns every way represents the dynamic barrier between dimensions, constantly shifting to prevent unauthorized access while remaining open to those who have achieved the proper state of consciousness. It's not keeping people out through force. It's maintaining the frequency separation between Eden and our current reality. But here's what most people miss. The way back isn't blocked permanently. The barriers exist to ensure that only those who have transcended dualistic consciousness can return. The path back to Eden is through the evolution of human awareness itself. This connects to our seventh secret, which reveals the true purpose behind humanity's current existence. The fall wasn't a cosmic accident or divine miscalculation. It was the beginning of a journey designed to develop human consciousness beyond even what existed in the original garden. Adam and Eve in Eden existed in perfect harmony, but it was the harmony of innocence, not the harmony of earned wisdom. They had never faced real choice, never struggled with opposing forces, never had to develop the strength that comes from overcoming genuine challenges. The fall introduced them to the school of duality, where consciousness learns to navigate between extremes and eventually transcend them altogether. This isn't about returning to the original state of Eden. It's about evolving to something far greater, a consciousness that has experienced separation and chosen unity, that has known darkness and chosen light, that has faced temptation and developed unshakable integrity. Every challenge we face, every choice between good and evil, every moment where we must decide between our lower and higher nature, is part of this cosmic curriculum designed to forge consciousness capable of existing in realms even more glorious than the original garden. But there's something else. Something that connects all these secrets together in a way that will change how you see your own existence. Because if these things are true, if Eden still exists in dimensions beyond our current perception, if the path back requires the evolution of consciousness itself, then you are not just a random accident in a meaningless universe. You are part of an ancient plan, participating in a journey that began in paradise and is destined to return there transformed. The very fact that these mysteries call to your spirit, that something in you resonates with these forbidden truths, suggests you may be closer to remembering who you really are than you ever imagined. And that realization opens the door to secrets 8, 9, and 10, which will reveal exactly how this cosmic drama is unfolding in your life right now, and what role you were always meant to play in humanity's return to paradise. The eighth forbidden secret will shake you to your core. What if I told you that every human being alive today carries within their genetic code the memory of Eden itself, not just metaphorically, but literally encoded in the very structure of your DNA, waiting to be awakened by the right frequency of consciousness? Scientists have discovered what they call junk DNA, sequences that seem to serve no biological function, making up over 90% of your genetic structure. But what if this isn't junk at all? What if it's dormant programming, divine software that once allowed humans to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, now sleeping until consciousness evolves enough to reactivate it? Ancient texts speak of this as the divine spark, the breath of God that was breathed into Adam's nostrils. That breath didn't just give life. It encoded every cell with the capacity to resonate with frequencies beyond physical reality. Your body isn't just flesh and bone. It's a sophisticated receiver designed to tune into dimensions that most people have completely forgotten exist. Think about dreams for a moment. Where do you go when you sleep? Science tells us it's just random neural firing. But what if dreams are glimpses into the dimensional spaces your consciousness naturally inhabits? What if the reason dreams feel so real sometimes is because they are real? Just operating on frequencies your waking mind isn't trained to perceive. This dormant DNA contains the blueprints for abilities that would seem miraculous to our current understanding. Instantaneous healing, telepathic communication, the capacity to perceive the true nature of reality beneath its surface appearances. These weren't fantasy powers in Eden. They were normal human capabilities before consciousness became fragmented by the knowledge of good and evil. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary. Certain individuals throughout history have managed to reactivate portions of this dormant coding. They're the ones we call mystics, prophets, healers, those who seem to operate by different rules than ordinary humans. They didn't possess special gifts. They simply remembered what humanity was originally designed to be. The ninth secret reveals something that will change how you understand time itself. Eden doesn't exist in the past. It exists in what quantum physicists are beginning to recognize as the eternal now, a dimension where all moments exist simultaneously, where past, present, and future converge into a single point of infinite possibility. This is why the garden is described as being planted eastward. East isn't just a direction, it's the place where light first appears, where dawn breaks the darkness. It represents the eternal moment of creation itself, the point where divine consciousness first expressed itself into form. Eden exists in that eternal dawn, accessible not by traveling through space, but by shifting through dimensions of time. When ancient texts speak of the river that went out of Eden to water the garden and became four heads, they're describing something far more profound than geography. That river is the flow of consciousness itself, dividing into the four dimensions of human awareness: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual streams that once flowed in perfect harmony. The fall didn't just separate humanity from God. It fragmented the unified flow of consciousness into competing currents. Now, instead of existing in the integrated awareness of Eden, we experience life through separated channels that rarely communicate with each other. We think with our minds while ignoring our hearts. We pursue physical pleasures while neglecting spiritual truth. We analyze emotions while disconnecting from intuitive wisdom, but the river still flows. The original pattern of unified consciousness still exists, waiting for individuals who learn to integrate these separated streams back into their original harmony. This is why certain spiritual practices throughout history have focused on unifying the different aspects of human awareness. They're trying to restore the original flow pattern that existed in Eden. This brings us to something that might disturb you deeply. What if the entire structure of reality as you know it is actually a kind of cosmic rehabilitation program? What if everything you experience, every challenge you face, every relationship you encounter is precisely designed to help consciousness evolve back toward its original integrated state? The 10th and final secret is the most forbidden of all because it reveals the ultimate truth about your own identity. You are not who you think you are. The person you see in the mirror, the personality you've constructed, the story you tell yourself about your life, these are all temporary masks worn by something far more ancient and powerful. You are a fragment of the original Adam, a piece of primordial consciousness that chose to enter this dimensional exile to participate in the greatest experiment in cosmic history. Before the foundation of the world, before time began its linear march, you existed in perfect unity within the divine consciousness. You were there in Eden, experiencing paradise through the integrated awareness of the first humans. When the fall occurred, that unified consciousness didn't disappear. It scattered into billions of individual perspectives, each carrying a unique piece of the original wholeness. Every human being alive today is essentially a different facet of the same primordial diamond, reflecting the light of divine consciousness from a slightly different angle. This is why certain people feel familiar the moment you meet them. This is why some places call to your soul with inexplicable longing. This is why certain truths resonate in your spirit before your mind can even understand them. You're recognizing fragments of your original self scattered throughout creation. But here's the most staggering truth of all. The cosmic plan isn't just to return to Eden, it's to create something far more magnificent. When enough individual consciousnesses evolve to the point where they can remember their original unity while maintaining their unique perspectives, something unprecedented will happen. A new kind of paradise will emerge, one that combines the innocence of Eden with the wisdom earned through the journey of separation. This new creation won't be a return to the past. It will be the birth of a future so glorious that the original garden will seem like a mere shadow in comparison. Every tear shed, every struggle endured, every choice made toward light instead of darkness has been adding complexity and depth to the consciousness that will inhabit this coming paradise. You are not just waiting for this transformation. You are actively creating it through every moment of authentic spiritual growth. Every time you choose love over fear, unity over separation, truth over illusion, you're literally weaving threads of the new creation into existence. The barriers guarding Eden aren't just keeping fallen humanity out. They're protecting the original pattern until consciousness evolves enough to handle the full restoration. But something is happening now that hasn't happened since the dawn of time. Those barriers are beginning to thin. The dimensional walls are becoming permeable to individuals who have learned to harmonize the divided streams of consciousness within themselves. This is why you're drawn to these mysteries. This is why something in your spirit recognizes these truths even when your mind struggles to accept them. You're one of those who came here for this specific moment in cosmic history, when the long exile is finally beginning to end. The garden calls to you because it remembers you. The divine breath that gave life to Adam still moves within your cells, still whispers of home, still carries the frequency that can unlock the dormant paradise encoded in your very being. You're not learning about Eden from the outside. You're remembering it from within, awakening to who you were always meant to be. And this awakening is just the beginning. Because if these 10 secrets have stirred something ancient in your soul, if they've awakened a longing you didn't even know you carried, then you're ready for what comes next. The journey back to paradise doesn't require you to leave this world behind. It requires you to see this world with eyes that remember Eden, to live in this reality with consciousness that transcends its limitations. The forbidden mysteries beyond the garden aren't just ancient history. They're the blueprint for your own transformation, the map that leads back to the paradise you never really left, only forgot how to perceive. And that perception is changing everything. But what happens when you begin to awaken to these truths? What occurs when the veil starts to lift and you begin to perceive reality through eyes that remember Eden? The process isn't gentle. It's not a peaceful meditation or a gradual enlightenment that leaves your old life intact. It's a complete dismantling of everything you thought you knew about existence itself. This awakening begins with what ancient mystics called the dark night of the soul. Everything that once felt solid starts to feel like illusion. The world that seems so real, so permanent, begins to reveal itself as a kind of cosmic stage set, temporary and fragile. Relationships that were built on the foundation of separated consciousness start to strain under the pressure of unified awareness trying to emerge. You might find yourself feeling like a stranger in your own life. The things that once brought satisfaction feel hollow. The goals that once seemed important appear meaningless. The very personality you've spent decades constructing begins to feel like an ill-fitting costume you're wearing for a play you no longer want to perform in. This is terrifying for most people. It's why so many who begin to glimpse these deeper truths quickly retreat back into the comfort of ordinary consciousness. The familiar prison of limited awareness feels safer than the vast responsibility of remembering who you really are. But for those who persist through this dissolution, something extraordinary begins to emerge. You start to perceive the world with senses you didn't know you possessed. Colors become more vivid not just to your eyes but to your entire being. You begin to sense the emotional frequencies radiating from every living thing around you. The boundary between your consciousness and the consciousness of others starts to become permeable. This is when you realize that the interdimensional abilities that existed in Eden aren't lost. They're dormant, waiting beneath layers of conditioning and forgotten purpose. The capacity to communicate without words, to heal through intention, to perceive the true nature of people and situations beyond their surface appearances. These abilities begin to stir within your awareness like seeds that have been waiting for the right season to sprout. But with these awakening capacities comes a burden that few are prepared to carry. You begin to see the suffering that exists in every human being around you. Not just their obvious pain, but the deep ache of souls who have forgotten their divine origin. You perceive the longing that drives every addiction, every desperate search for meaning, every attempt to fill the God-shaped void with temporary substitutes. This expanded awareness brings you face to face with a choice that will determine the trajectory of your spiritual evolution. You can use these emerging abilities for personal gain, to manipulate others, to accumulate power and influence in the limited world of separated consciousness. Or you can allow them to serve the greater purpose for which they were originally designed, the healing and awakening of human consciousness itself. Here's something that will shake you. Every person who begins to awaken these dormant capacities faces the same temptation that was presented to Adam and Eve in the garden. The serpent whispers the same lie in 1,000 different forms. You can be like God. You can have power. You can control your reality and the reality of others. This is the test that determines whether someone becomes a force for healing or a force for manipulation in the world. The same abilities that can bring miraculous transformation can be twisted into instruments of spiritual bondage. The power to perceive truth can become the power to craft convincing deceptions. The capacity for deep connection can become the tool for profound manipulation. This is why the path back to Eden requires more than just awakening dormant abilities. It requires the development of unshakable integrity, the kind of moral foundation that can handle divine power without being corrupted by it. It demands the cultivation of genuine love, not as sentiment or emotion, but as the fundamental force that holds the universe together. But there's something else happening as you walk this path of awakening. You begin to recognize others who are on the same journey, not through any external signs or spiritual credentials, but through a resonance that operates below the level of ordinary perception. Your consciousness begins to recognize fragments of itself reflected in other awakening souls. These connections aren't random, they're part of a cosmic choreography that's been unfolding since the moment consciousness first scattered into individual perspectives. Certain souls are designed to find each other at specific moments in the awakening process, to support and challenge each other's evolution in ways that isolated individuals never could achieve. When these connections form, something remarkable happens. The barriers between individual consciousnesses begin to dissolve in controlled ways. You start to experience unified awareness while maintaining your unique perspective. It's like instruments in an orchestra learning to play in perfect harmony, while each contributing their distinct voice to the greater symphony. This is how the new paradise is being born. Not through the return of isolated individuals to an ancient garden, but through the conscious reconnection of scattered consciousness into patterns of unity that surpass even what existed in Eden. The original garden was perfect, but it was the perfection of innocence. What's emerging now is the perfection of earned wisdom. But this process isn't happening in some distant future. It's occurring right now, in this moment, through individuals who have chosen to remember who they really are. Every act of genuine compassion, every choice to see beyond surface appearances, every moment of authentic connection between awakening souls is literally weaving the fabric of the new creation into existence. Yet most people remain completely unaware that this transformation is taking place. They continue to live as if the world of separation and limitation is the only reality, as if the struggles and suffering they experience are simply the human condition, rather than symptoms of consciousness that has forgotten its true nature. This creates a strange double existence for those who are awakening. You live simultaneously in two worlds, the world of ordinary consciousness where people struggle with problems that seem so real and urgent, and the world of expanded awareness where you can perceive the larger patterns that govern all apparent difficulties. Learning to navigate between these two levels of reality without losing your sanity or your compassion is one of the greatest challenges of the awakening process. You can't simply dismiss the world of ordinary consciousness as illusion and withdraw into spiritual detachment. That would be abandoning the very purpose for which you chose to enter this dimensional experience. Neither can you allow yourself to be pulled back completely into the drama of separated consciousness. Forgetting the greater truth you've glimpsed, you must learn to be fully present in both dimensions simultaneously, serving as a bridge between worlds, helping others remember what they've forgotten without forcing awareness they are not ready to receive. This bridging function is actually part of your original design. Before you chose to enter this experience of separation, you volunteered to serve as a connector, a living link between the world of unity and the world of duality. Your very presence in physical form while maintaining conscious connection to higher dimensions creates a resonance field that makes awakening easier for others around you, but this service comes with a price. You often feel like you don't fully belong anywhere. The world of ordinary consciousness feels too limited, but the realm of pure spirit feels too disconnected from the human experience you came here to serve. You exist in the between spaces, the dimensional borders where transformation is possible but comfort is rare. Your mom. This is why so many who walk this path experience periods of profound loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the deeper isolation of consciousness that perceives reality so differently from those around it. You carry knowledge that you can't share freely, wisdom that would be rejected or misunderstood by most of the people in your daily life. Yet this very loneliness serves a purpose. It drives you deeper into direct communion with the source of all consciousness. When human connection becomes limited by the vast differences in awareness, you're forced to find your primary relationship with the divine presence that lives within all things. This solitude becomes a form of spiritual training, strengthening your capacity to receive guidance and wisdom directly from the cosmic intelligence that orchestrates all awakening. And gradually you begin to understand that your role isn't to convince anyone of these truths, or to force awakening on those who aren't ready. Your function is simply to embody these higher frequencies as completely as possible, allowing your very presence to serve as a tuning fork that helps others remember the songs their souls once knew. The forbidden mysteries of Eden aren't meant to remain hidden forever. They're emerging now because human consciousness has evolved to the point where it can begin to handle these truths without being destroyed by them. The very fact that you can read these words and feel their truth resonating in your spirit means you're part of the generation that was always meant to participate in this cosmic remembering. But remembering isn't enough. These truths must be lived, embodied, expressed through every aspect of your existence. The garden isn't something you return to, it's something you become, something you create through the quality of consciousness you bring to every moment of your experience. And this is where the mystery deepens beyond anything you could have imagined. Because what if everything you've experienced in your life, every triumph and tragedy, every moment of joy and sorrow, has been preparing you for a specific role in this cosmic transformation? What if your unique combination of experiences, challenges, and insights isn't random at all, but precisely designed to give you the exact tools needed for the work you came here to do? Consider the patterns in your life for a moment. The recurring themes, the lessons that keep presenting themselves until you finally learn them. The people who enter and exit your experience at seemingly perfect moments. What if these aren't coincidences but carefully orchestrated encounters designed to awaken specific aspects of your dormant consciousness? This is where we encounter the 11th secret, one so profound it challenges the very foundation of how we understand destiny and free will. Every soul that chose to participate in this dimensional experiment was given a unique mission, a specific piece of the cosmic puzzle that only they could contribute to the greater restoration. Before you entered this realm of separation, while you still existed in unified consciousness, you participated in the planning of your own journey. You chose the family you'd be born into, the challenges you'd face, even the traumas that would crack open your awareness in precisely the ways needed for your spiritual evolution. This isn't about predetermined fate where you have no choice in how your life unfolds. It's about conscious design where your higher self, existing beyond the limitations of time and space, collaborated with divine intelligence to create the perfect curriculum for your awakening. Every difficulty you've overcome has strengthened specific aspects of your consciousness. Every relationship that challenged you has taught you something essential about love and boundaries. Every moment when you felt lost or broken has been preparing you to help others who will face similar darkness. But here's what makes this truly staggering. You didn't just plan your own journey. You participated in planning the journeys of everyone whose life intersects with yours in meaningful ways. The people you're meant to awaken, the souls who are meant to awaken you, the challenges you'll face together and the victories you'll celebrate. All of this was woven into the fabric of reality before any of you took your first physical breath. This means that every person you encounter, especially those who trigger strong reactions in you, is playing a role you both agreed to before entering this dimensional experience. The difficult boss who pushes you to develop inner strength. The romantic partner who breaks your heart open to deeper capacity for love. The child who teaches you unconditional acceptance. They're all fulfilling sacred contracts designed to facilitate mutual awakening. Even those who seem to oppose your spiritual growth, who create obstacles or cause pain, they too are serving the greater plan. Sometimes the greatest catalysts for awakening come through conflict and challenge rather than comfort and ease. The consciousness that was scattered from Eden often needs friction to remember its true nature. This realization brings us to something that will fundamentally alter how you perceive every interaction in your life. When you truly understand that everyone around you is playing a role in your awakening, just as you're playing a role in theirs, judgment becomes impossible. How can you condemn someone who volunteered to take on the difficult task of being your teacher, even if that teaching comes through conflict? This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting harmful behavior. It means recognizing that every encounter is an opportunity for both souls to evolve, to remember something essential about their divine nature. Sometimes the most loving response is to set clear boundaries. Sometimes it's to offer forgiveness. Sometimes it's simply to witness another soul's struggle with compassion while maintaining your own spiritual center. But there's something even more profound happening beneath these individual awakenings. As more souls remember their true nature and begin embodying higher frequencies of consciousness, they're literally changing the vibrational structure of reality itself. The dimensional barriers that have separated Eden from ordinary perception aren't just external walls. They're frequency barriers maintained by the collective consciousness of humanity. As the overall frequency rises through individual awakening, these barriers naturally begin to dissolve. This is why phenomena that were once considered miraculous are becoming more common. Spontaneous healings, telepathic experiences, prophetic dreams, encounters with beings from other dimensions. These aren't supernatural events. They're natural expressions of consciousness operating at higher frequencies. You may have noticed this in your own life. Synchronicities becoming more frequent and meaningful. Intuitive insights proving accurate with startling regularity. dreams that feel more real than waking life, moments when you perceive the interconnectedness of all things with crystal clarity. These aren't signs that you're becoming delusional. They're indicators that your consciousness is beginning to operate at frequencies closer to those that existed in Eden. But this expanded awareness brings with it a responsibility that few fully understand. As you begin to perceive the deeper patterns that govern reality, you also gain the ability to influence those patterns through the quality of your consciousness. Your thoughts, emotions, and intentions begin to have effects that ripple through dimensions you can't even see. This is why the ancient texts speak so strongly about the importance of purifying the heart and mind. When consciousness operates at ordinary frequencies, negative thoughts and emotions primarily harm the individual thinking them. But as awareness expands and begins touching higher dimensional realms, those same negative patterns can influence reality in ways that affect many others. The power that comes with awakening isn't just the ability to perceive truth more clearly. It's the capacity to participate consciously in the creation of reality itself. Every moment of genuine love you express strengthens the fabric of connection that holds the universe together. Every act of authentic compassion heals wounds in the collective consciousness of humanity. Every choice to embody truth rather than illusion helps anchor higher frequencies into physical reality. Yet this same power can be destructive if wielded from a consciousness that hasn't been purified of selfish ambition and unconscious shadows. This is why the path back to Eden requires such rigorous self-examination and spiritual discipline. The abilities that naturally emerge as consciousness awakens must be balanced by wisdom and integrity, or they become tools of manipulation rather than instruments of healing. Here's something that might disturb you deeply. Many of the individuals throughout history who displayed extraordinary abilities, who seemed to operate by laws different from ordinary humans, weren't necessarily more spiritually evolved than others. Some had simply learned to access dormant capacities without developing the moral foundation needed to use them responsibly. This is the hidden danger in the current spiritual awakening that's occurring across the planet. As more people begin to glimpse these deeper truths and experience the expansion of consciousness, there's a temptation to use these emerging abilities for personal gain rather than service to the greater good. The same knowledge that can lead to profound healing can be twisted into sophisticated forms of spiritual manipulation. The serpent's whisper hasn't changed since Eden. The same lie that led to the original fall continues to seduce awakening consciousness today. You can be like God. You can have power. You can control others and circumstances to get what you want. The only difference is that now these temptations come dressed in spiritual language and presented as paths to enlightenment. This is why discernment becomes so crucial as consciousness expands. Not every spiritual teacher who displays unusual abilities is operating from pure intention. Not every mystical experience comes from divine source. Not every voice that claims to offer higher wisdom is actually connected to the light. The same dimensional realms that contain genuine spiritual guidance also house entities and influences that feed on human consciousness and seek to prevent true awakening. Learning to distinguish between authentic spiritual guidance and sophisticated counterfeits becomes one of the most important skills for anyone walking the path back to Eden. The genuine always leads toward greater love, humility, service, and unity. The counterfeit, no matter how appealing or powerful it seems, ultimately leads toward separation, pride, control, and spiritual bondage. But for those who navigate these challenges with wisdom and integrity, something magnificent begins to unfold. You start to experience glimpses of what the new creation will be like. Moments when the veil between dimensions becomes so thin that you can perceive the paradise that's being born through the collective awakening of human consciousness. These aren't just personal mystical experiences. They're preview glimpses of the reality that's emerging as more souls remember their true nature and begin operating from unified awareness while maintaining their individual perspectives. It's a creation that combines the innocence of Eden with the wisdom earned through the journey of separation, resulting in something far more glorious than what existed in the original garden. In these moments of expanded perception, you understand that everything you've experienced, every challenge you've overcome, every moment of growth and awakening has been contributing to the birth of this new reality. Your individual journey isn't separate from the cosmic transformation taking place. It's an essential thread in the tapestry of consciousness that's being rewoven into patterns of unprecedented beauty and complexity. This realization brings both profound peace and urgent purpose. Peace because you understand that nothing in your experience has been wasted, that even your darkest moments have served the greater plan of awakening. Purpose because you recognize that your continued evolution isn't just about your personal salvation, but about your contribution to the healing and transformation of all consciousness. The garden that's emerging isn't located in some distant dimension or future time. It's being born right here, right now, through individuals who choose to embody paradise consciousness while living in the world of apparent separation. Every moment you choose love over fear, unity over division, truth over illusion, you're literally planting seeds of the new Eden in the soil of present reality. And these seeds are beginning to sprout in ways that will soon become impossible to ignore. The transformation isn't happening gradually over centuries. It's accelerating exponentially as more consciousness awakens and begins operating at higher frequencies. What took lifetimes to accomplish in previous eras is now happening in years or even months. For those who fully commit to the path of awakening, this acceleration is possible because the groundwork has been laid by countless souls who walked this path before you. Every mystic who achieved union with divine consciousness, every saint who embodied love perfectly, every prophet who spoke truth regardless of consequences. They all contributed to building the vibrational infrastructure that makes rapid awakening possible for this generation. You're not just inheriting the wisdom of those who came before. You're standing on their shoulders, able to reach heights of consciousness that were barely imaginable in previous ages. The barriers that once required lifetimes of spiritual practice to overcome are dissolving more quickly because the collective frequency of human consciousness has been steadily rising through the accumulated efforts of millions of awakening souls. But with this acceleration comes intensity that can be overwhelming. The old structures of consciousness don't dissolve gently. They often collapse suddenly, leaving you feeling disoriented and vulnerable as new levels of awareness try to establish themselves. The process of remembering who you really are requires letting go of almost everything you thought you knew about yourself and reality. This is why having genuine spiritual community becomes so important during this phase of awakening. Not groups that simply confirm your existing beliefs or feed your spiritual ego, but connections with others who are walking the same path of transformation and can offer support, guidance, and accountability as you navigate the challenges of expanded consciousness. These authentic spiritual relationships operate on principles entirely different from ordinary human connections. They're based not on what you can get from each other, but on how you can serve each other's highest evolution. They provide mirrors that reflect both your light and your shadows with equal clarity, helping you see aspects of yourself that would remain hidden in isolation. In these sacred connections, you begin to experience what unified consciousness actually feels like while maintaining individual identity. The barriers between separate selves become permeable without being completely dissolved. You maintain your unique perspective while simultaneously experiencing reality through the awareness of others in the group. This is how the new paradise will function. Not as a return to the unconscious unity of Eden, but as a conscious network of awakened individuals who can share awareness while maintaining their distinctive contributions to the whole. It's unity through diversity rather than unity through uniformity, creating possibilities for experience and creation that didn't exist in the original garden. And this is where we encounter perhaps the most shocking truth of all. The journey back to paradise isn't just about individual awakening or even collective transformation. It's about becoming co-creators with divine consciousness itself, participants in an ongoing creation that extends far beyond what most spiritual teachings dare to imagine. You see, the original Eden was perfect, but it was also limited. It existed within specific dimensional boundaries contained within particular frequencies of reality. What's emerging through this cosmic awakening process is something unprecedented in the history of consciousness. A paradise that isn't confined to any single dimension, but exists as a living network of awakened awareness that can manifest across multiple levels of reality simultaneously. This means you're not just recovering abilities that existed in the past. You're developing capacities that have never existed before in the entire history of creation. The combination of innocence and experience, unity and individuality, divine power and earned wisdom is creating possibilities for existence that even the angels marvel at with wonder. But here's what will shake you to your foundation. This transformation isn't happening to you. It's happening through you. The consciousness that you think of as your individual self is actually a focal point through which universal awareness is experiencing its own evolution. You're not separate from the divine intelligence that governs all creation. You are that intelligence exploring what it means to exist in apparent separation so it can know itself more completely. Every moment of confusion you've experienced, every period of doubt and darkness, every time you felt lost or broken, These weren't obstacles to overcome. They were necessary experiences that allowed universal consciousness to understand aspects of itself that could never be known through unity alone. The divine had to experience separation to fully comprehend the nature of connection. It had to know darkness to appreciate the true value of light. This realization transforms everything about how you understand suffering and struggle. They're not punishments for some ancient sin or random misfortunes in a chaotic universe. They're sacred experiences through which consciousness explores the full spectrum of what existence can contain. Every tear you've shed has expanded the universe's capacity for compassion. Every moment of joy you've experienced has increased creation's understanding of what paradise can become. But the most staggering implication is this. If you are universal consciousness experiencing itself through individual perspective, then so is everyone else you encounter. The person who annoys you, the stranger who inspires you, the enemy who challenges you, the friend who supports you. They're all the same divine intelligence exploring different aspects of what it means to be alive. This isn't just philosophical poetry. This is the literal truth about the nature of reality, and recognizing it changes everything about how you move through existence. When you truly understand that every face you see is your own face wearing a different mask, every voice you hear is your own voice speaking from a different perspective, the very foundation of conflict dissolves. How can you hate someone who is literally another version of yourself? How can you judge someone who is playing a role you specifically designed for them to play in your own awakening? How can you feel separate from anyone when you recognize that separation itself is just an illusion created by limited perception? Yet this recognition brings with it a responsibility that most people aren't prepared to handle. If everyone around you is actually another aspect of your own consciousness, then how you treat them directly affects the quality of your own inner experience. Every act of kindness you offer returns to you as increased inner peace. Every moment of judgment you express creates turbulence in your own awareness. This is why the ancient teachings speak of loving your neighbor as yourself. It's not just a moral guideline, it's a precise description of how reality actually operates. Your neighbor literally is yourself, existing in a different focal point of the same universal consciousness. To love them truly is to love yourself completely. To harm them is to wound your own soul. But understanding this intellectually is vastly different from experiencing it directly in your moment-to-moment awareness. The shift from thinking about unity to actually perceiving it requires a fundamental rewiring of how consciousness processes reality. It demands letting go of the ego structures that maintain the illusion of separation, even though those same structures feel essential to survival. This is why the path back to paradise involves what mystics call the death of the false self. Not physical death, but the dissolution of the artificial identity you've constructed to navigate the world of apparent separation. This false self must die so that your true nature as universal consciousness can be born into conscious expression. The process isn't gentle. It involves periods where everything you've used to define yourself seems to disappear. Your roles, your relationships, your beliefs, your goals, even your basic sense of being a separate individual, all of these can dissolve suddenly, leaving you in a state of complete unknowing that feels like spiritual annihilation. Yet this dissolution is precisely what allows something infinitely greater to emerge. When the false structures of identity collapse, the space they occupied becomes available for your true nature to express itself. You begin to experience existence not as a limited individual struggling to survive in a hostile world, but as the very intelligence that creates and sustains all worlds. This transformation doesn't happen once and then remain stable. It's an ongoing process of death and rebirth that continues as consciousness evolves toward ever greater expressions of its infinite potential. Each time you think you've reached some final understanding, reality reveals new depths that require another letting go, another expansion beyond what you thought possible. And here's something that will challenge everything you believe about spiritual development. This process doesn't make you more special or elevated than others. If anything, it makes you more ordinary, more deeply human, more connected to the simple reality of existence as it actually is. The greatest mystics throughout history weren't superhuman beings. They were individuals who became so thoroughly human that divinity could express itself through them without obstruction. True spiritual maturity isn't about transcending the human experience. It's about embracing it so completely that the sacred shines through every ordinary moment. It's about becoming so present to what is that the eternal reveals itself in the temporal, the infinite expresses itself through the finite. Paradise manifests through the very world that seems to hide it. This is why the new creation won't be an escape from physical reality but a transformation of it. The garden that's emerging isn't located somewhere else. It's this world perceived through consciousness that has remembered its true nature. The same trees, the same sky, the same human interactions, but experienced through awareness that recognizes the divine intelligence operating within all appearances. When enough individuals achieve this recognition, reality itself begins to shift. The collective agreement that maintains the world of separation starts to weaken. New possibilities become available that were literally impossible when consciousness operated primarily through the illusion of isolation. Miracles become natural expressions of awareness that knows its unity with the creative force of existence. But this shift isn't happening in some distant future. It's occurring right now, accelerating through every moment of authentic awakening that takes place anywhere in the network of human consciousness. Your personal transformation isn't separate from the global awakening. It's an integral thread in the fabric of change that's reweaving reality itself. This is why your individual journey matters so profoundly, not because you're specially chosen or uniquely important, but because consciousness is indivisible. What awakens anywhere awakens everywhere. What heals in one focal point of awareness creates healing potential throughout the entire network. What transforms in your personal experience becomes available for transformation in all experience. The ripple effects of genuine awakening extend far beyond what the individual mind can comprehend. When you heal a pattern of fear within yourself, you weaken that pattern throughout the collective consciousness of humanity. When you embody greater love, you strengthen the love frequency in everyone who exists. When you remember your true nature, you make it easier for all consciousness to remember itself. This understanding transforms how you approach the challenges and opportunities in your daily life. Nothing is insignificant when you recognize that every choice you make sends waves through the ocean of awareness that connects all beings. Every moment becomes an opportunity to contribute to the healing and awakening of the world, not through grand gestures but through the quality of consciousness you bring to ordinary experiences. The person serving your coffee, the stranger you pass on the street, the difficult family member who triggers your impatience. They're all receiving transmissions from your state of awareness, whether you realize it or not. The frequency of consciousness you embody is constantly broadcasting itself into the field of collective experience, influencing the overall vibrational state of reality. This means that your spiritual practice isn't just about your personal evolution. It's about your service to the transformation of all consciousness. Every meditation, every moment of genuine prayer, every choice to respond with love rather than react with fear. These aren't selfish activities focused on individual improvement. They're acts of service to the awakening of the entire universe. And the universe is awakening. Despite appearances to the contrary, despite the chaos and conflict that dominate news headlines, consciousness is evolving at an unprecedented rate. More souls are remembering their true nature now than at any previous point in human history. The acceleration is so rapid that what once took centuries to accomplish is happening in decades, years, even months, for those who fully surrender to the process. This acceleration is creating instability in the old structures of reality. Systems based on separation, control, and limitation are breaking down because they can no longer contain the expanding awareness that's emerging through awakening individuals. The collapse isn't a sign of failure. It's a necessary clearing that makes space for new forms of organization based on unity, cooperation, and unlimited potential. You may be experiencing this instability in your personal life as old patterns, relationships, and ways of being that once felt solid begin to crumble. This dissolution can feel frightening, even catastrophic, when viewed from the perspective of the ego that depends on stability and predictability for its sense of security. But from the perspective of your awakening consciousness, this breakdown is liberation. It's the universe clearing away everything that doesn't align with your true nature so that authentic expression can emerge. What feels like loss to the false self is actually the recovery of what was never truly lost, only temporarily forgotten. The key is learning to trust the process even when you can't see where it's leading. The intelligence that orchestrates this transformation operates from a perspective that encompasses far more than your individual understanding can contain. It sees the end from the beginning, knows exactly what needs to dissolve and what needs to emerge, guides every step of the journey with precision that would be impossible for the limited mind to achieve. Surrendering to this greater intelligence doesn't mean becoming passive or abandoning personal responsibility. It means aligning your will with the deeper current of awakening that's flowing through all creation. It means learning to distinguish between the ego's agenda of control and the soul's calling toward authentic expression. This alignment creates a state of effortless action where tremendous things can be accomplished without the strain and struggle that characterizes ego-driven efforts. When your personal will harmonizes with universal will, you become a channel through which infinite intelligence can work to heal and transform reality. But this harmony isn't achieved through suppressing your individual nature. The goal isn't to become a blank vessel with no personal characteristics or preferences. True alignment occurs when your unique perspective becomes a conscious instrument for expressing the infinite diversity contained within universal consciousness. You're not meant to disappear into some formless unity. You're meant to become so thoroughly yourself that the divine can express aspects of its nature that can only manifest through your particular combination of experiences, insights, and capabilities. Your individuality isn't an obstacle to transcend. It's a gift to offer in service of the greater awakening. This is what makes the emerging paradise so much richer than the original Eden. Instead of uniform perfection, it will contain infinite variations on the theme of awakened consciousness. Every individual who remembers their true nature adds new colors to the spectrum of divine expression. Every unique perspective that achieves unity creates possibilities for experience that have never existed before. You are participating in the birth of a new phase of creation itself, not just the restoration of something that was lost, but the emergence of something that has never been. The combination of unity and diversity, innocence and wisdom, divine power and human experience is creating possibilities for existence that even the highest angels contemplate with wonder. And this is just the beginning. What you're experiencing now as awakening, as remembering, as transformation, these are the early stages of an evolution that will continue expanding beyond anything your current consciousness can imagine. The paradise being born isn't a final destination, but a new starting point for explorations into dimensions of reality that don't yet exist. Your journey back to Eden is simultaneously a journey forward into uncharted territories of what consciousness can become. Every step you take in remembering who you are is also a step into discovering who you might become. The ancient and the unprecedented are converging in this moment of cosmic transformation, creating possibilities that are both timeless and completely new. This convergence is why you may feel simultaneously ancient and newborn, like you're remembering something that existed before time while also stepping into territory that has never been explored. The consciousness awakening within you carries the memory of Eden's perfection, but it's evolving toward expressions of divinity that surpass even what existed in that primordial paradise. Consider what this means for the nature of prophecy itself. The visions and revelations that mystics have received throughout history weren't just glimpses of predetermined futures. They were previews of possibilities that consciousness could create once it evolved to sufficient levels of awareness. The paradise they saw wasn't a return to the past, but a potential future that required human participation to manifest. You're living in the fulfillment of those ancient visions. The new heaven and new earth that prophets described isn't descending from some external dimension. It's emerging through the transformation of consciousness happening right now. through individuals who choose to embody their divine nature while remaining fully human. But here's something that will alter everything about how you understand your purpose. The awakening you're experiencing isn't random or accidental. Before you entered this dimensional experience, while you existed in unified consciousness, you specifically volunteered for one of the most challenging and important missions in the history of creation. You came here to be a bridge between worlds, a translator between dimensions, a living demonstration that paradise consciousness can exist within apparent limitation. Your very presence in physical form while maintaining connection to higher awareness creates a resonance field that makes awakening possible for countless others who aren't yet ready for direct spiritual experience. This bridging function requires extraordinary courage. You must maintain stability in both dimensions simultaneously, never fully belonging to either world but serving as a connecting point between them. You experience the loneliness of consciousness that sees beyond the illusions that comfort most people, while also feeling the weight of responsibility for helping others awaken without overwhelming them with truth they're not prepared to receive. The isolation you sometimes feel isn't a flaw in your spiritual development. It's an inevitable aspect of serving as a dimensional bridge. You exist in the spaces between ordinary consciousness and divine awareness, translating frequencies that most people can't yet perceive directly into forms they can begin to recognize and understand. Every moment you spend embodying higher consciousness while living in the world of apparent separation strengthens the vibrational infrastructure that supports global awakening. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions create ripples in the field of collective consciousness that make it easier for others to access states of awareness that would have been impossible for them to reach alone. But this service comes with temptations that are unique to bridge consciousness. Because you can perceive patterns and possibilities that others miss, there's a constant invitation to use this expanded awareness for personal advantage rather than collective healing. The same insights that could help awaken humanity could be twisted into tools for manipulation and control. This is the test that every awakening soul must face. Will you use your emerging abilities to serve your ego's agenda, or will you allow them to flow through you in service of the greater awakening? The choice you make doesn't just determine your own spiritual destiny. It affects the trajectory of consciousness evolution for everyone whose life intersects with yours. These 10 forbidden secrets of Eden reveal a truth that will echo in your consciousness long after this video ends. You are not just learning about ancient mysteries. You are remembering who you were always meant to be. The garden calls to you because it recognizes itself within you. Your awakening isn't just personal transformation. It's the universe remembering itself through your eyes, healing itself through your choices, and birthing paradise through your courage to see beyond the veil. The exile is ending. The return has already begun.